There are so many things to think about when you're filming a documentary, like do we have a story, or what audio are we going to use when we're in the field, what cameras are we using, are the stakes high enough, etc., etc. But in my opinion, it's all about the main character, the man or woman whose story you're telling. They need to stand out, which means a few things. Number one, your interview location really needs to inhabit who your main character is. And number two, your audio just needs to be clear and crisp and just mwah. And number three, your lighting needs to be on point. This is what we're gonna focus on today. Hey, what's happening everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I'm gonna show you 3 different ways you could use one light to get a cinematic look for your next documentary interview. Let's get into it. In my opinion, lighting is a vital element in the filmmaking process to get right. You could have the best camera in the world, but without great lighting, it's just gonna look Of course, lighting is important for any filmmaking project. However, in a documentary film, when you're out in the field and run and gun filmmaking, you're at the mercy of whatever light you have available in the moment. This is why I feel it's important to nail your lighting in the interview, making your character just that much more interesting, making them stand out more, leaving your viewers at the edge of their seat, just anticipating what's gonna happen next and how the story ends. There are so many ways to light an interview to capture the tone and the look that you're going for your story. I'm not gonna show you all of them in this video. However, I did pick 3. 2 of them are techniques that I like to use in the interviews I shoot personally, and one of them I just found pretty interesting. So without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Our first lighting style is called Rembrandt lighting. This is when one side of your subject's face is well lit while the other side would be in shadow, all except for this inverted triangle on their cheek. Now, this was a well-known style that was presented by the famous 17th century painter Rembrandt. And today, this is something that most portrait photographers and cinematographers use when trying to shape the tone of their scene. In fact, this is something I'm usually trying to achieve in all of my YouTube videos. You can see this triangle here on my cheek. It's just a really flattering look, but also adds a little bit of mood and a little bit of depth, which I like for my videos personally. Now, I do realize that a lot of us probably know who Rembrandt is and are very familiar with this lighting technique, but there was one thing I did want to mention, and that is there are many ways to achieve this look, not just with a parabolic softbox like I'm using in this example here, but also like in some of the examples that I'm going to show you a little bit later in this video. And I also wanted to show you just how different sizes of softboxes can really change the mood and the image overall. Here is the difference between these 2 softboxes here. I have my Aperture Light Dome Mini as well as this Godox, can't remember what it's called, I'll leave a graphic right here, and we're just going to compare the 2 and see what they both look like. Here is how those 2 softboxes look. First with the Light Dome Mini, the much smaller softbox, and then with the Godox. Here's a side-by-side comparison so you can see what those look like together and the differences that they're making on your subject's face. Again, you could use any of these softboxes, you could use any light really. Any of these lights or softboxes will do the trick. Now let's try adding a little bit of this haze in the room, which by the way, I'm gonna add to all of the images in this video. Now you could certainly skip this step and the shot will look just as great, but this is just something that I like to use personally, and it really just depends on the project and the story that you're trying to create. I'm going with a spray haze for this video, but when I'm with clients or I'm doing a higher production film, I usually like to use my haze machine because it's water-based haze and it's just a lot better than wait, what's in that stuff? But here's the final look with the bigger softbox using Rembrandt lighting. Let's move on. Okay, so now moving on to number 2, and that is the book light. Now this one you might have seen in one of our past videos. We take this one light setup and bring it to the next level in that video, so if you'd like to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description below. But for now, let's get into the core of what this setup is. First, we get our foam board and we set that at a 45-degree angle at our subject. Now this is gonna act as our key light, and you'll see how in just a minute. Next, we shine our light source. This light is bouncing off of this board and onto the subject. By the way, this is just a project board, something I got from the grocery store. You could use anything white. You could use your white wall if you have white walls. Anything white will work. I had this lying around, so that's what I used. Now that's acting as one source of diffusion. Now let's get into our second source of diffusion. So after this, we're gonna use what's called scrim. Now what I'm using is white muslin. I got this from Amazon for about $10 for a yard. It's very affordable. However, you could use whatever's available, whether it's a white curtain or white tablecloth or a white bed sheet. It doesn't matter, any of these would work just as great. I set this up on a C-stand. If you don't have a C-stand, not to worry. If you have some gaff tape available or any kind of tape, you could tape it to your ceiling. Just be careful with that kind of stuff because when you rip the tape off, some paint might come with it and you might not like that. Now from there, your light source is shining and bouncing off of this white foam board through the scrim and shining onto your subject's face, acting as your second diffusion. We're going through double diffusion, so when we do that, we usually have to bring the light source up a little bit so that our subject can stand out. However, as you can see behind me, the light is spilling all over the room, which I don't want personally, and this is probably a little bit too much. So I'm gonna grab the barn doors that came with this light and see if that helps. So once again, we're just gonna add a little haze to the room, and here's the final look of our book light. All right, number 3. Our third setup is 3-point lighting. Now, I'm sure most of us are familiar with 3-point lighting, but to get into it just a little bit, it starts with your key light, and then on the opposite side, your fill light, and then behind the subject is gonna be your hair light, giving you kind of a 3-dimensional look and really having your character or the person you're interviewing really stand out. This is a technique that's used in almost any Hollywood film or any film in general. There are gonna be plenty of times when you are gonna wanna use a fill light, and it's not always gonna be in that traditional sense. Sometimes it's gonna come from the window and you just gotta put some scrim over that and kind of diffuse that light a little bit like I did in this film trailer here. But how can we accomplish this look, this one right here, with just one light? Well, let's see. First, I set up my hair light. I have that pointed at my subject at a 45-degree angle on the opposite side of where my key light is gonna be coming from. And my key light is once again gonna be that foam board, and that's gonna be at a 45 as well, again on the opposite side of where the hair light is. The hair light is gonna be bouncing off of that foam board and onto my subject's face, acting as our key light. Now, how do we get our fill light? Well, on the other side of the foam board is a white flag, or something that I rarely use unless I'm outside, but this is a really great material. It reflects really well and it's easily controllable. I'll leave links to all this stuff down below if you're interested. But here's how I get my fill light. We start with the hair light bouncing off the foam board, acting as our key light, and our key light is then bouncing light off onto this flag, now acting as our fill light. Here's an example of me pulling it away and how much it's actually doing on that side of my face, filling in the shadows. It's not a whole lot, but it does make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. It's all the micro adjustments that really make the image look great. And one more time, we're gonna add a little bit of haze to the room. So here's the final look. I think it actually looks pretty good, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Which one of these looks or techniques did you like the best? There's so many different ways that you can light an interview. It really just depends on the story and the tone that you're looking for to drive that story. It's really just up to you as the filmmaker and what you're feeling and how you envision that particular story. So I would just encourage you to try some of these techniques out for yourself. Practice them often and just see what works best for you. Well, that's gonna do it for me, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this quick tutorial. If you like this video or you learned something, please click the like button down below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Laters.